Welcome to another exciting episode of The Harvest with me, Carmel Fisher. Today, we bring you a corporate strategist turned entrepreneur with a focus now on finance and fintech ventures. With me is Sabine Vanderlinden. Welcome into the show. We're excited to get to know you more and shed some light on all the exciting adventures and ventures you're working on.
Nice to meet you, Carmel. Thank you very much for having me on your show.
Wonderful. As a start, please tell our audience who you are, how you've journeyed from a corporate strategist to now be drawn into the world of fintech ventures and doing it basically as an entrepreneur from an independent perspective.
Sure. I've worked in the corporate sphere for over 20 years. I work with big organizations such as IBM, PwC, FICO, so big companies and big tech companies. And through that work over, I guess, 20 years of working with corporates, big companies as well in the insurance sphere, insurance and finance. So some of the big names would include an HSBC, for instance, or big corporate like Zurich, Viva. I mean, those are big Fortune 500s. Around 2015, I decided that it was time for me to leave corporate world. And the way it happened is actually some investors, I would say former CEOs of HSBCs, had made investment into a fintech startup. And they approached me and said, Sabine, you have been working for big companies for a very long time, so it's time for you to give back. At the time, I thought, yeah, it's interesting. Left corporate world and jumped into that startup world, which at the time was fintech, financial technology startup trying to revolutionize the finance world. And we know many of those big companies like Klarna can fit into this. Stripe, everybody's using Stripe today. Those are companies that came to market, I would say just, 10 years ago. And now are unicorns and build big organization, managing our finances and making it more digital. So moving from strategy and being an executive of big companies to going into a much more entrepreneurial sphere is that at the time, I wanted to try fintech. And then I realized actually there was probably a gap between young ventures wanting to enter whichever world they wanted to enter, and finance, working in big corporations. And so I decided around that time, which was 2015, to move into building acceleration program. So I built two well-known acceleration program. I guess some of your listeners will know about Techstars and Y Combinators. I built the same in Europe, called SBC, Startup Bootcamp, in Europe, in the United States. And for 5 years, I've accelerated probably over 100 startups, helped them raise a lot of money. And that is where the entrepreneurial lens comes from, taking my corporate expertise and bringing it to startups, often young people who think that they can revolutionize the world, but when they're actually working in a business-to-business sphere, really understanding how corporate works, make a big difference.
Very interesting. Thanks for sharing that. So you've been exposed to a myriad of strategies, a myriad of trends that have come and gone. Are there any trends affecting the finance, healthcare, insurance sectors today that you can speak of, and ones that you've kind of helped these startups you speak of navigate successfully through?
There are a lot of trends. We are in the world of fast-moving trends right now, right? Speed of change is unprecedented, fast right now. But, from a technology viewpoint, I guess there's no surprise that AI and generative AI are the forefront. So a startup with no AI will not do very well from an investment viewpoint, right? Everybody needs a little bit of AI in their platforms to actually have any investors paying attention. But I think for me, it's more beyond, it's more than just AI. It goes beyond artificial intelligence to include what I call frontier technology, which is a combination of artificial intelligence with technology such as cloud computing, right? If you have your AI in the cloud, it means that you can do personalization. It's quantum. It means that if you combine AI and cloud and quantum, you can move faster and do things potentially at speed that no one else can actually deliver things. But it's also about new technology such as the metaverse and Web3, which we are not. We are still in Web2, right? We are still working on the internet. We are in the Web2 world. Moving to Web3 when we have the ability to visualize things with VR glasses and get into new world needs to also to actually be understood. So companies are looking at all this technology. There is the speed of change with AI right now, which means that the whole traditional business model and the whole traditional way of doing things has to change. And so you have this trend around technology, which is therefore affecting the way we work in business. So how that affects the way we work in business? First, we have been, since COVID, working remotely, remote working, hybrid working, flexible working. It means that people need all this tech in a collaborative manner, in an easy-to-use edge computing, which is around working from your computer, so access to all this technology either on a mobile phone or a computer. So that is another trend. How can we make people work better, faster, if they want to work away from an office? Some companies accept it, others may not. Another big trend is the fact that people don't have skills. With all this technology coming to bear, we have a major problem around talent, skilling, upskilling, reskilling people who often do not actually understand the magnitude of the technology which is coming to us and the implication around technological education. So we need to actually achieve some level of technological literacy, which is kind of missing now. So you will see in the news a lot of, cybersecurity gaps where we don't have enough skills to actually deal with cyber. We don't have enough talent doing with AI. We don't have enough talent dealing with a lot of problems affecting the world right now. And so I would talk about the three main topics: technology change, talent gap, and therefore remote working, which actually imply a problem around the future of work.
Yeah, makes total sense. And the pace of change, to your point, is so fast that can we really blame the humans out there who are, I believe, doing their very best to stay on trend, right? To stay up to date with a lot of the changing technologies, etc. Do you find that it's just a disconnect because of the pace of change, or is it something to do with individuals preferring a more flexible way of living, working? I'm just trying to see if there's any connection to what AI is bringing in terms of more time, less commitment to actually know what you're doing because the AI or technology should be doing it for you. Or is it more about people just naturally wanting to have more of a better work-life balance and so being less dedicated to educate themselves? If you can add some light to that.
Well, I think since COVID, I think people have realized that there is no certainty in life. And I think a lot of people have actually made that realization that building certainty for oneself is critical in a world which is changing very fast. So with COVID, we've seen the big resignation. Millions of people decided to move away from very lucrative jobs to find that work-life balance, to actually spend more time around defining their own purpose. And so when you actually look at people understanding that what a pandemic can bring, you find that, okay, they are doing a job, they are working for companies, but they're also actually trying to make sure that if there is something like this happening again, they have the safety nets to protect themselves. So what is happening is people sometimes leave very lucrative jobs, but also find ways to work for really good companies and also have gigs, activities around the side. Some may be paid gigs, some may be unpaid, but actually what they are doing is building resiliency around building skill set, which are relevant for them. Now, I think that the question itself around the speed of change, the fact that we have different expiration around the way we work and how we fulfill our purpose, and the fact that today we need to learn a lot much faster around the technological change which are affecting us, means that there is a gap. There is definitely a gap between the skills we have. Just think about ChatGPT coming technically out in November 2022. What happened here is not the technology coming out. It was made available to people like you and I, business people who are not technologists, and now have the ability to learn to use a tool like I would say, a data scientist. So bringing that technology into the hand of a business person, a very plain, normal business person, means while we are using those things, those tools, we need to learn new skills. Prompt engineering, for example, has become one of these hot skills one needs to have, which means that we have a need for reskilling and upskilling. So then we go into us as human. Are we willing to spend some time learning in our own time to actually learn the new skills? So that is a personal choice. But I think for anybody wanting to succeed today, a lot of investment has to be put into learning and developing personal skills, making the extra investment to learn those new technologies, because there's not enough people understanding them right now, probably in 9 to 5 jobs, and finding that space to learn those skills is going to build the talent of tomorrow. And so, yeah, time is spent on that nowadays, more so than ever before.
Totally agree with you. And I think a big chunk of this conversation, or this topic at least, should be for the audience to understand that it's really not as complicated as it's made to believe. AI, at least, so the prompting you're speaking of, it's just about getting your teeth in there, getting your hands wet, just jumping in, playing around with the technology, and you realize how simple it really is. There's a lot of myths surrounding that it's highly complex, highly expensive. No, it's actually, none of the above. It's just get in there, get past your limitations of, or the fear of whatever it is, and find that it's actually really useful, and ever changing. Tell us now about Venture Labs and what this will bring to the world of corporate innovation.
So a venture lab, or what we call now venture clienting, is a process where we help corporations, big companies, think about Pepsi, Coca-Cola, Bosch, BMW, big organization with a lot of processes and a lot of legacy, I would say, because they've been in business for years, hundreds of years, giving them capabilities, which I call techniques, tools, processes, structure, to actually collaborate much more easily with startups. Now, whether you think about Bosch or BMW, I am not doing corporate venturing with those organizations. They already have their teams, and some of their teams have come out and actually build their own process. But for the past 10 years, when I left corporate life, I was fortunate enough to build the first accelerator in Europe to allow corporates to work with startups. Now the model has moved on. It has evolved. And you either go and doing corporate venturing, which is about corporate investing in startups, or you do what we call venture client model, venture clienting, which is corporate collaborating with startup. The old terminology for that was corporate startup engagement. Not sexy, but it was corporate startup engagement, where a corporate collaborate with startups, pay them for a project, and then actually sending signals that they actually are willing to actually welcome startups to collaborate with internally. The new terminology is called corporate venture clienting, is called venture clienting. And venture clienting as a model is only focused on collaboration and partnership and commercialization. So it's a startup being out there solving a number of problems, but then the corporate also saying, you know what, we have a problem, let's say around mobility and wanting to improve the way we do navigation. So think about BMW, for instance. They may actually have all this technology inside the car, but all the time they are trying to refine and improve the technology in the car. One of the signals they may send is, okay, we need to improve our navigation system. So they have a choice. They could work with an Apple or, an Android, Google to get the navigation done. They could embed this into their technology. Or they can go after startups and say, is there a startup able to give me the capability so that I can embed that into the dashboard of my car? So it's finding that collaboration, dance where corporates and signal and said, we have those problems we want to solve. We're prepared to solve this with startups, which are B2B, business to business startups, and we are going to pay them to actually solve those problems. To be able to do that very well, you need processes, you need a framework, you need approach, you need culture, you need, as I said, to send signal out there into the marketplace. And so more and more corporates are trying to refine their framework as to how they collaborate with startups beyond just investing. And that's what we do. We help those corporations, and my focus is insurance. So I work with big corporations in the insurance field, in finance field, and help them industrialize, so build a framework, the playbook, the blueprint, the template, and then democratize, which means do it in more than one country, the framework as to how they collaborate with startups. And the reason why we need the framework, right, is people do the job, right? Individual like you and I have to do the job. So you need to actually create a framework that everybody can replicate easily whilst putting their personal touch, but it is consistent across a corporate office in one country or multiple countries.
Thank you. That clears things up a lot for me. Would you say, I know you're focused on insurance, but in the broader scheme of things, is there one particular industry that you're seeing a bigger trend towards this kind of collaboration or need? Is there an industry driving more growth in this way?
So I wouldn't say an industry is driving more growth. I think what you find is more and more corporates realizing that they need to have this ambidextrous way of working where they have their internal project, where they actually probably trying to improve their legacy, right? When you think about big corporations, usually they have a lot of legacy systems. So you have, run the business, deal with the legacy, and then you have the innovation, like Gartner would tell, you have the transformation initiative. Usually a lot of people are focusing on legacy, 80%, and 20% are focusing on innovation. So let's say we are focusing on the 20% of innovation. Who is doing that well? The Pepsi and the Coca-Cola have done that for forever. Think about the IDEO model. Think about Steve Blank's, for example, around the startup, framework that he developed. So those techniques have been out there for quite a while. But what you find is there's always an evolution. You have, like Industry 4.0. We have an evolution. We are probably in phase 2 or 3 of this corporate startup engagement model, which is more around now called corporate venture clienting, where a corporate actually have made a tangible choice and have a structure internally to do that. I think industry which are going to get the most benefit though right now because of climate change and sustainability would probably be mobility. So the BMW, the Mercedes, the Volkswagen, the Fords are going probably to take advantage of it because we have a number of trends affecting us. Sustainability, right? We have climate change. A lot of governments are asking us to look at our carbon footprint. So therefore, where we have a lot of fossil fuel use, petrol in cars, so you will see the mobility sector trying to address the problem. So I think this is a big industry. Then you will see after COVID, remember, if you ordered something, if you got it delivered on time, it was very hard. So manufacturing will probably also be manufacturing and supply chain. Industry will also probably look into innovation. Last mile is still a big problem. I don't know whether you get your parcel, but I have a lot of problem when getting my UPSs. They never can actually deliver something on time or actually find my own house. Actually, I just don't even understand whether they are using GPS. But what that means when you start looking at the last mile, if there is opportunity in improving the last mile from a manufacturing viewpoint, when you're manufacturing, you want to deliver, supply chain, but also from a delivery viewpoint. So as you're actually starting looking at the big macro trends, whether they are geopolitical changes, a lot of use of artificial intelligence or sustainability, then you start looking at the subsector. Quickly, you can actually see manufacturing, mobility, supply chain management will actually be the one probably trying to take advantage of it, because no big corporation can do it fast enough, right? So the startups are the king in the castle, because they can move fast, they can work in the chaotic, they can use very little resource, they have the ability to think laterally. So startups and startup founders become actually amazing enablers of big corporates, because they can't move that fast and they need to move faster with the change occurring to us right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Very profound. So you obviously have come across many different obstacles, perhaps, that could be preventing startups from successfully commercializing with corporations. Can you speak to us about those, and what can they be doing better to better position themselves to effectively collaborate?
Yeah, I think often technology is not the problem. When a corporation said, I need that piece of tech, the technology often is not the problem. Founders of tech startups, I've built that tech startup because they wanted to solve a big problem, and they have actually made the study often to actually solve the problem faced by, the corporate world. I think the biggest challenge often is the fact that often tech founders can be highly arrogant. And so when you work with a corporate, which been in business for 100 and 150 years, their people and their team will not have time to deal with an arrogant founder. So culture is very important. The ability to work and find alignment is going to be critical. And it's why, some of the framework we end up deploying is not just about being corporate ready. It's about startup being corporate ready to actually understand the nuances as to how one work with a big mammoth organization. We often like to use the metaphor of speedboat for the startup and tanker for big corporation. That alignment between the two is critical. And then the cultural alignment is also critical. So often it's not the technology which is the problem. It's people being able to work with people.
Yeah, the age-old adage, right? It always comes down to human before anything else. Now, obviously, I imagine there's some qualification process that you implement as part of this framework, or even prior to the framework being implemented, so that they can successfully collaborate. Do you have a qualification process, like you tick these boxes in terms of everything you've just said, culture, technology, however they stand? What does that qualification process for startups look like in commercializing with corporations?
Yeah, I mean, the basic criteria would be, first, do you have a solution that is relevant for the industry at a specific point in time? So I remember, a while ago, blockchain was the thing everybody talked about. But when you look at in finance, especially in insurance, we could talk about blockchain, but no one could actually see a use case which would be relevant. So having a technology which is relevant at a specific point in time for a specific industry is going to be critical. Then second criteria is the founding team. Usually corporation would avoid working with one founder. They want a founding team, because if they need to solve a problem, they can actually access other of the founding members. So within your founding team, you have the CEO, you have a chief operating officer, you usually have a CTO, right? When you have a technology-based solution. And then you're actually going to build the other skill set, one chief marketing officer, because to be able to position your solution, you need a marketing team, which is often the last pillar that most startups do not consider to actually address when they're actually trying to drive their growth and go to market. So then you're actually looking at finances. When you work with corporations, they are very slow. So either you have friend and family money or you have investor money, but you need to actually think and going into that potential relationship may take a year to get into that relationship. So you need 12 months of cash flow if you're actually going to make some of those initiative works. So I think as a basic, the people, the technology, the financing, and then the execution ability. It's great to have a great team, but being able to execute, right, to stop the people and just demonstrating that you can actually deliver against your promise will be critical. So I will keep the criteria to that from a startup team. But actually, success is, as we said earlier, is about culture, is about people getting on with one another. But when you look at even the process and the signal, I would say, if you want to work with a corporation, just read the annual report and actually try to understand the problem they are planning to solve for the year. Because every 3 years, a corporation will set up their strategy and they are going to stick to it at least for 3 years before going into a new strategy cycle. So read that annual report. Then from that annual report, look at the themes, the problem they are trying to solve. So a lot of my industry trying to solve for simplicity, taking the process, which are really complex, making them more simple and more transparent for their customer. I know a lot of people hate insurance. I find it super interesting because insurance touches everything, whether you're actually a business owner, you need insurance, right? If you have a climate change issue and you have a simple I wouldn't say office, but it could be an office, but a shop. Think about the shop, right? A shop without insurance when there is a major climate change issue, it's a problem because you may never recover. And often, shop owners do not realize that. So whilst, people may dislike the topic of insurance, our goal is to simplify it, to make it super simple for a buyer to understand why you're buying insurance, transparency, what are the clauses within the terms of the contract and so on and so forth. So a lot of insurance companies are really trying to make it simpler and easier for people to understand what they are buying and then make it simpler, the claims on the apps, on the mobile phone. So that is a type of innovation. So once you know this is what the corporation wants, then you just talk their own language, right? You formulate your solution in their own language, not listing all your functionalities and benefits and all the things, only the one which is relevant for them. So, you start actually looking at that dance between the corporate and the startup, and you realize you have the basics, the tick in the box, and then the relationship-based one, which is going to actually demonstrate that they understand the company, its people as well, do some research on their people, and then so that they can actually have interesting conversation as to how they're solving a problem with only the feature and benefits relevant for the problem that need to be solved, not all the list of things that may be on the menu.
100%. Yeah, keep it custom based. I think in today's attention deficit, right, that we all kind of having because of information overload, 100%, just keep it short and sweet and specific to speaking to their needs. Tell us now more about any interesting business models that you know of or are looking forward to that may be changing our world as we speak and into the future.
I think there's no surprise that the software as a service business model is going to continue to evolve with artificial intelligence, right? Subscription models are going to explode. I think because I mentioned earlier, we have a skill gap. So we need to reskill and upskill people. I think EdTech, educational technologies and enabling people to learn on their own term without having to go and have a degree from university will also become very prominent and in demand because then you can access learning and content, right? Education at a lower price than actually if you were going to do an MBA, for instance. I think a second business model, I mentioned sustainability, would be around the circular economy, which is reusing, recycling, repurposing things rather than buying things and throw them away. So that specific business model is going to actually become, I think, in finance, whether it's finance or non-finance, think about Caterpillar, right? If you remember Caterpillar, you used to buy your drilling machines. Now you can rent them. So that is a circular economy because they take it back, they repair it, and they change it. when required. So that is, I think, a very critical business model, circular economy business model, which needs to be applied to actually fulfill the needs around sustainability and also climate change. And then the last one is, for me, ecosystem-based business model. What is an ecosystem-based business model is, look at corporation. They know how to do very well what they do very well. Insurance company know how to sell insurance. Banks are very good at payment, let's say, but then they need to outsource to those young ventures or others what they are less good at doing. And that's where ecosystem-based business model become critical, because you really need to understand your purpose and what you are good at. And then you outsource or use partners to fulfill the needs of your value chain where you are less good at things. So I would say those three business models. As a service, for sure, subscription model will explode, continue to explode. Then the circular economy, because we need to become better at upskilling, but also at repurposing and recycling and actually reusing stuff rather than buying new. And lastly, working with others, which means that you need to think very differently when you're actually involving and implementing things with others as part of your business model.
Excellent. We can absolutely hear why Sabine Vanderlinden is a top 50 women in tech, as well as a fintech and insurtech influencer. This has been a fantastic conversation. Sabine, thank you very much. Where can we find more information if we want to hear more about Alchemy Crew? That's yours?
Yeah. My company is called Alchemy Crew Ventures, and that's where we work with ventures, and we work as well with corporates to implement those venture clienting models. You can find me on LinkedIn. That's where most people try to reach me. I'm also quite active on X and trying gradually to build my Instagram. But as you, I have a very well-known podcast called Scouting for Growth, which is a top 50 in the UK and top 200 in the United States.
Wonderful. We'll definitely check it out. Thank you again so much.
And you're listening to the Harvest Podcast, available anywhere you find podcasts. Stay tuned for more.